sorry. We could ask Nancy to bring in our choir from DeWitt Carter Public School. That's Madame Wynn. Hello.
Mr. Steele, how are you?
Good. So this evening, DeWitt Carter Public School Junior and Intermediate Choir will sing O Canada, plus they'll also sing a number of Christmas carols for us. So if everybody could please rise for O Canada.
Rudolph, with your nose so bright, won't you guide my sleigh tonight? Then how the reindeer loved him as they shouted out with glee. Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer, you'll go down in history.
1, 2, 3, ready, begin.
Je te dis joyeux Noël, tu me dis joyeux Noël, on se dit joyeux Noël, et aussi bonne année. Good tidings we bring to you and your kin. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Oh, bring us some figgy pudding, oh, bring us some figgy pudding, oh, bring us some figgy pudding, and bring it right here. Good tidings some, so bring it right here. Good tidings we bring to you and your kin. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We all like our figgy pudding, we all like our figgy pudding, we all like our figgy pudding with all its good cheer. Good tidings we bring to you and your kin. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Je te dis joyeux Noël, tu me dis joyeux Noël, on se dit joyeux Noël et aussi bonne année.
Thank you. That was fantastic. Introduction of addendum and delegation items, Madam Clerk.
There are no addendum items this evening.
Before I move to confirm the agenda, I want to move items number 7 and 8 after item 9B. Get our presentations finished for this evening. So with that, can I have a mover and a seconder to confirm the agenda? Councillor Bodnar, Councillor Horgard, any questions? All those in favor? That's carried. Any disclosures this evening? Thank you. So I'm going to move over to the podium and have our 2019 Mayor's Christmas Card Contest winners. So as everybody saw coming in, we have our lineup of all our Christmas card winners with the Mayor's Christmas card coming out, and they were all on the floats during the Christmas parade last Friday. So this time I'd like to thank all of our children of the city for sending me their drawings for consideration in our Christmas card contest. Tonight, as you can see by these poster boards, we have some very good artists in the city of Port Colborne. Their drawings were blown up and put on these poster boards and displayed on our float for the Santa Claus parade. Each of you will get to take home your upsized drawing. We also have a framed copy of the card for each of you. For the front of the card, we chose a drawing by Maria Gonzalez, a grade 8 student at Oakwood Public School. Her drawing shows our iconic bridge and city logo, as well as great detail in her evergreen trees. If Maria could come up at this time. Good job, man. Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, you want to turn it? Let's move on.
We can give those out after.
Yeah, we'll do that after we get the other ones. We also have a participate prize package for each of our winners, which also includes some blank Christmas cards for you to take home and send to family and friends. Next, we have Mercedes Allen, a grade 7 student at St. Patrick Catholic School, who provided us with a drawing of the iconic bridge inside a snow globe with buildings in the background. Mercedes, can you come on up? front. Kaylin Laramie is a grade 2 student at Oakwood Public School. She drew a picture of our lighthouse decorated for Christmas. If Kaylin can please come up at this time. Thank you. And what grade are you in? Grade 2. Fantastic. Come on over here. Let's face the cameras. Big smile. Hold it lower so we can see your smile. There you go. I know her. You know? Oh, okay. You all set? You want to go stand by your card? Okay, thank you. Next is Nathan Saltarelli, a grade 8 student at St. Patrick Catholic School. Nathan's picture is our library and archives building, which are special to his family as his mom works there. Also, he and his brother Adam have a coloring duel going on to see who can get their picture into the city's Christmas card the most. It's true. You should see the messages I got last year. Nathan currently has 2, and his brother Adam has 1, but Adam now has 2 more years to try again. So Nathan's here. Thank you, Nathan. Let's move on here. Next is Ashton Anderson, a grade 5 student at St. Therese Catholic School. Ashton's picture is Santa driving the grader at our new Engineering and Operations Center, where his dad fixes our city equipment. These are chosen without knowing anything, believe me. When we get them, they're all just a picture, and the back has all their information. That's something that Nancy and I go through. We don't know anybody, who anybody is, and then we pick our bunch and then narrow it down, and so these are all at random. So for those that may be twice, it's because these guys are pretty talented artists. I'll tell you that right now. All right. How are you? Good. Let's go here. Hold on. Sure. You want to go stand by your car? Thanks. Next, we have Ksenia Rungi Rustin, a grade 7 student at École Saint-Joseph. Ksenia's picture is of a couple relaxing on a park bench on West Street, watching a ship pass under the bridge. If Ksenia can please come up. How are you? Good. And now we have Riley Hunold, a grade 7 student at St. Patrick Catholic School. Riley's no stranger to winning this contest. This year she drew Christmas balls containing scenes of Port Colborne. Riley, if you want to come up. See you again. Come on up front. So this time we'll get our group photo with all our contest winners. That's one thing we've got to be proud of in the city of Port Colborne is the talent we have from young kids with their artwork and to people like my aunt who's 88 or 89 and still doing artwork to this day. So we've got great artists in the city of Port Colborne from top right to bottom in age category. Next we have Don Gilbert, Manager of Operations, and John Sander, Manager of Customer Engagement. Canadian Niagara Power, and they'll be providing a year-end review of recent capital investments and performance levels. Don, welcome.
Thank you, Bill, or Mayor Steele, and Council. Thank you for having us up again. I will let you know this will be my last time coming up. I intend on retiring next year, so tonight's the one to bring it on. So if you could, here's your chance, I guess is the best way to put it. The agenda. Oh yeah, I see that. Yeah, I see that. So just give you a quick idea of what we're going to do tonight. We'll just talk about quickly talk about the 31st major weather event that we had. We'll look a little bit at our system reliability for the year 2019, year to date. The recent CMPI investments into the city of Port Colborne. Our operating and maintenance program, customer communication enhancements, which we've all been asking for, I'm sure, and you'll be happy to know that they're on their way. So just quickly looking at what happened. It started about 7 o'clock on the 31st of October. We were anticipating winds around the 100-kilometer-an-hour mark. What we realized were about 130 kilometer-hours that evening, and with sustained winds, almost 80, 90 kilometers an hour almost all night. We actually had to pull our folks off the road for a little while to make sure that their safety was of the utmost to us as well. We did respond to emergencies during that stand down, but we did make sure that we took care of our fellows as best we could. At the height of the storm, we were approximately 8,700 customers without power. That's 33% of CMPI's customer base. 42 broken poles that night. An average storm for Canadian Niagara Power is 5, 6, and that's a heavy storm. 5, 6 poles broken. That night we were hit with 42 broken poles. We received over 450 work orders in that 5-day event, and we received approximately 3,000 calls that we had to attend to. And again, that was in a 5-day period. Looking at the timeline that it went sort of down, so on the 31st we were right around 7 till 2 in the morning, about 4,500 customers out. November 1st, we were up to 8,700 customers out, 1,246 restored, so we were up over 9 at one point. November 2nd, we had reduced that number down to 3,300 customers without power, 5,400 restored, and we had 45 crew members on the ground. We relied on Niagara Peninsula Energy, K-Line, GAMS, Welland Hydro, Peters Construction. We had back trucks, and we had 45 team members on the ground that day, and another probably 25 to 30 inside. Excuse me, I got a bit of a cold. By day 3, we were down to 400 customers without power, 2,900 more restored, still 45 crew members on the ground. November 4th, day 4, 76 people without power, 320 restored, and on day 5, 37 out with 35 restored. Most of them at that point were torn down stacks, broken equipment that we had to have and wait on ESA to come in on the event. And that's what happened. I haven't seen a storm of that magnitude. Most of them are, 10-year storms. This was one in the maybe 1 in 20-year storm. This was a bad one for us. Context on that: we attended down to Prince Edward Island to Maritime Electric on the Dorian hurricane storm. That was a 2-week event. They had 96 broken poles, so we replaced 42 broken poles in a matter of 5 days with the crews that we had, which was a tremendous effort on behalf of our operations staff. So, anyway, moving into the reliability, as you can see, year to date we're at about 2.13. We're tracking at maintaining the same level of reliability as we've had in 17, in 18. We're not looking at 17 anymore. We're looking at that in our rearview mirror and hopefully continue to do so. Again, the biggest causes of the events: weather, wind, lightning, wildlife, emerald ash borer infestation, although they are getting less on the tree issues and on the emerald ash borer tree issues, and equipment failure. Let's look at what we did in 2019. So again, you probably have all seen what's going on down around the Jefferson area. about $600,000 in line rebuilds in the Jefferson area, another $300,000 in distribution automation, 17 automated device implemented, full implementation in Q3. We signed an agreement with G&W last week, or a week and a half ago, and that's a $400,000 investment into distribution automation, which is going to allow us to pick customers up a lot quicker. I think I mentioned that the last time we were here. Wildlife equipment protection, we've initiated a new program where all of our critical switches and all of our high-risk equipment is going to be protected now better from, we're still going to have squirrel issues, we're going to have bird issues. One of our big outages we had this year was a hawk got in the line, which caused a subsequent failure of a connecting point down the road, so it doubled itself. As you can see, we got a new substation at Jefferson, which was about $2 million. So in the Port Colborne Service Center in 2019, approximately $4 million in investment in the area. I'm going to call John up to talk about customer communications, and I think you'll be very happy with what John has to tell you.
Evening, Mayor Steele, Council. What I wanted to do was continue on the conversation that we had earlier this year that spoke to some of the improvements that we wanted to put into place as part of our improvements to communication. And as a highlight, we wanted, I'll focus on two major elements, is the customer self-help portal, which is scheduled for February 2020. It's in its final testing phases, and I'm going to go in a bit more detail with each of these, but just as a high level on timelines. It's in final testing, and our customer outage notification, the text-based, that's scheduled for Q1 of 2020. And let's see. So with respect to the customer self-help portal, we're like I said, we're continuing with the testing. We have a system built right now, and it's active. We're running it with internal staff that are part of the service territory. They're going through all of the elements from a customer-centric perspective. They want to test it and get the same, get a good user experience that we want to share with all of our customers in the service territory. Elements such as online payments, all of your payment history, your historic consumption, and update of personal information. All of that will be provided in the first cut of this solution in Q1. Some future elements we'd like to have we have hopefully on target for within the year of 2020 is a longer term posting the outage map directly on an external, this external location. So you either can get to it via an app on your smartphone or through a computer. Now, when there's a storm, typically your phone is the best method of retrieving that information. So we found that to be the best. We're going to communicate that to folks probably for the most part is the best source of information. With respect to outages and what we've seen in the recent storm, I will say it was, from my perspective in kind of working through this project, it was good timing to experience, again, what the customers are seeing and what they'd like to see in terms of information presented to them. We saw a lot of communication on social media. We did provide, to the best of our ability, hourly updates both to the general public through our social media channels, as well as specific notifications to City of Port Colborne. Basically, we want to provide information that's relevant to the customers. Customers just want to know that we know that their power is out, I think is the message that we're hearing. And again, we want to provide customers with the outage areas, basically what our current restoration efforts are, and then notify them of that progress. I think one of the questions came up either in the last session or just through some ongoing dialogue, that how can we better kind of customize messaging to customers specific to a particular outage, or at least within the Port Colborne service territory. With the text-based outage notifications, we will have awareness on the OMS, the outage management system, of a particular outage in a particular area. we can simply use that outage. It'll be graphically represented in our system. We can just kick off a text-based notification to all of those customers subscribed to the service. Currently in our system, we have about 18,000 mobile numbers, and that covers the whole area. So we have already a good starting point for Port Colborne customers as well. So we'll be sending out marketing material for that in the very near future to get people aware of it and also get them subscribed, because it's only as good as the number of people that we have signed up for it. And I believe that's it. So we can thank you for the time, and we'll open it up to any questions.
Yeah, thanks, gentlemen. Questions? Councilor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship, and thanks for getting out all those crews and subcontractors pretty quickly. It's a good thing we didn't have that outage all across the region, that they were available. You answered one of my questions already in that you're going to break down Port Colborne outages. Unfortunately, I didn't have a power outage. I was just checking your website every once in a while and had the Twitter feed on it. But it was probably a great system for you guys looking at your entire territory. But if you live in Port Colborne, whether there's 4,000 people out or 200 people out, you really want to know how many are out in Port Colborne. I guess just to give your mind a little bit of ease, notwithstanding 200 out could be a big problem, and 4,000 out could be, three branches across a line, but at least it's an indication. I had two questions though beyond that, and one was, given our rate base is Fort Erie and Port Colborne combined, when storms such as this, regardless of where they are in Port Colborne or Fort Erie, how does that evolve down into the rate? So do you total storm damage? Is that submitted to the OMB? Is it you recover your money over time, or do we expect a significant hit in the year after a storm? So that's question one.
Yeah, it's a good question. At the end of the day, yes, we would, on an average year with the OEB, we will budget a regular amount of money with respect to operating and maintenance. When we get in a significant event such as this one, there is a possibility of a rider that could be applied in the following years until that added incremental O&M cost is realized. So the answer is yes, and we're examining that right now.
Okay. Second and last question is, last time you were here, you talked about upgrading some backfeed from Welland, and you used the December date. I know that wasn't an issue for this storm, but I'm just wondering where you're at with that to provide greater reliability in times not even including a storm.
Well, we're constantly working or trying to talk Welland into giving us that line back. It's going to take some convincing to get the line back, but we've got a good relationship with Welland Hydro right now. And I would expect that if we can continue to keep the negotiations going with them, that we would look 6-8 months down the road again. It's not on their number one priority list right now, to be quite honest with you. So we want to get that C1P from Hydro One back in play. That's the most important one to us right now that we're focusing our attentions on the transmission line. And I know they're working on it right now. We've just put some switching orders out to start to isolate our own work so that they can do their work on this. So they are a little bit behind, but we can certainly look to having that transmission circuit, the redundant transmission circuit first.
Okay, Councilor. Councilor Dash?
Just a couple general hydro questions, because I've been asked this before. Customer has a street light out. Every pole has a number, correct?
Numbers that may or may not be referenced in our GIS.
So the consumer, whatever, the pole's out in front of their house. Do they say they live at this house, or do we try to get that number off the pole to give that? I know you have a spot on the website to report.
Actually, both pieces of information are very helpful to us to get that work done.
Okay, because I know one time I said something to somebody.
But keep in mind, we don't manage streetlights. I know it kind of rolls around at the end of the day, but we don't really manage streetlights.
So that would be on the maintenance side of things?
It's ours.
That's just yours.
Okay, that's
It's
ours.
yes.
Perfect. I'm done. Thank you.
It used to be that way,
Yeah.
but that's been transferred. Those
Yeah,
duties
we
have been
do that now, so.
Yes, you do.
Yeah. Thank you. Councilor Bodner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the presenters. How do you handle trees that may be dead or dying and obviously leaning towards your hydro lines? What's the general rule on that? Do you let them hit the lines and hope nothing happens, or?
No, we would prefer not to let them hit the lines. We don't own any trees at the end of the day, and trees are always an issue. We do have a limited budget when it comes to trees, usually about $500,000 a year, and that includes the regular schedule. But quite honestly, when people bring it to our attention, we address almost every tree. Well, we address every tree and have a look at it, see what's up. Usually, we'll clear it to the point where if it is a danger tree, we will clear it to the point where it's below hitting our equipment. But we're not going to clean it up. We're not in the business of trees. We're in the business of tree clearance. So that's the way I'll answer that question.
Sure. Fair enough.
Okay, Councillor? Any further questions? Great, gentlemen, thank you.
I just wanted to add one thing. After the last storm, after the 31st storm, I wanted to say that it was a fantastic opportunity to work with Chief Cartwright, yourselves, all the council, the city staff. It was a real positive experience working with you folks. I know that we've improved. Both of us have grown closer because of that opportunity to work together. So I would like to thank you on behalf of CMPI, and I hope we can continue to keep the positive movement forward. So thanks again. Thanks for having us too.
Thanks, Don. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. So back to item 7, determination of items requiring separate discussion. Sorry? Oh, sorry. Item 6, I need a mover and a seconder for the regular meeting of Committee of the Whole, 28-19, held on November the 25th, 2019. Councillor Desmarais, Councillor Wells. Any questions to that? All those in favor? That's carried. Items requiring separate discussion. Can I have somebody bring up item number 1, please? Councillor Baggy, you'll bring up item number 1 because it needs to be brought forward. Okay. I'll start on my left. Councillor Bodnar.
Item 2, Mr. Mayor? Or we're going to?
Item 2, yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Item 4, Mr. Mayor.
Item 4, Councillor Colborne. Frank, nothing? Nothing? Gary?
Item 2 and 13.
Oh, I lost our camera. Sorry, 2 and 13?
Yes.
Okay. So 13, Councillor Bruno. Councillor Baggy, nothing? Councillor Desmarais?
Item 13, please.
Item 13. Councillor Wells, anything?
Item 3.
Item 3. Councillor Wells. Nothing else you want to draw? You're all set? You're all set, Peter? You don't have anything to draw? Okay. Okay, item number 8, approval of items not requiring separate discussion. A mover and a seconder. Councillor Bodnar, Councillor Beauregard. Questions? All in favor? That's carried. No delegations. Our mayor's report. Be short this evening due to the festivities we've had. On Saturday was our annual Santa Claus parade. A big thank you to everyone who participated in the parade this year. We had 58 floats, biggest ever. It was phenomenal. All decked out in wonderful decorations and lights, and it was quite a night. And of course, the jolly man himself, St. Nick, was there, and everybody waited right to the end when he came by. So our 6 judges had a difficult time deciding, but the winners are, and my bribes didn't work, Councillor. I tried to give you lots of candy, but what can you say? But I think who the judges chose are admirable picks. These are great floats. So we had the 2nd Port Colborne Scouts had the Community Award. Dance Expressions had the Business Award. Port Colborne High School had the Musical Award. Quad Niagara ATV Club had the Other Award. I don't really know what other is, Councillor, but maybe you can...
It was a category.
So it was a category, okay. And our Girl Guides had the People's Choice Award. So congratulations to all these groups, but congratulations to all 58 participants. It was a phenomenal parade, and the crowd was huge. The weather cooperated this year, and I'm sure the judges we're looking forward to next year. Good stuff. Coming up, ring in the new year with your family by joining us on December the 31st at the Valley Health and Wellness Center for cookie decorating, the Mad Scientist, bouncy castles, kite making, face painting, games, free swimming and skating. Most activities are on between 2 in the afternoon to 6 p.m. and specific times for shows are listed on our website. Weather permitting, our fireworks will go off at 6 o'clock. And on behalf of staff and members of council, we wish everyone a very, very Merry Christmas and a joyous New Year, as this is our last meeting for 2019. Regional Councillor. Oh, sorry. Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. I'm just wondering, in light of the last presentation, sounds like Welland is part of the key link to giving us more power reliability. I was just wondering if you and your offices could have a chat with the Mayor of Welland. We could have a chat with Mr. LaRouche. He's on one of the committees Ron Budner and I are on. So perhaps as a neighboring city, that item could get elevated by their hydro, which would help Port Colborne.
Definitely. The one thing I did want to mention is that the redundancy line that we talked about in the summertime when we were over at the Davis Street station, that is with Hydro 1, so that's moving forward. They're just getting, as he said, they're getting all their equipment in order to have that switched over, so that'll be starting soon. But yes, the issue with Welland and the Crowland station will, we're always in conversation, as Don said, with Welland Hydro, but certainly with Mayor Campion and his council, we'll be talking to them. Good, thank you. Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Mayor Steele. It's good to be here. Everything looks so festive. Really enjoyed the choir, and the artwork was amazing. I have a few things tonight. I left you some pamphlets at your spots around the horseshoe. This is Community Support Services of Niagara pamphlets that helps basically helping seniors live at home. So you have a variety of them, and maybe they'll be helpful to you in your duties with the public. Community Support Service of Niagara is funded by the LINs, and it's available to all people in Niagara. So I guess we'll start with the tough news of the budget meeting last Thursday. We were at 6%. It has been lowered to 5.8. We meet again this Thursday to finish it off one way or another. For those of you who like numbers, like Councillor Bruno, here's just kind of a breakdown. It's based on an average household of a house assessment of $277,000. So department-based budget are $15. Net provincial policy change is $8. Long-term care development is $22. New and enhanced programs is $2. And the agency boards and commissions make up a pretty large portion, just $34. And new assessment, $20. So if they figure out approximately 85% of the households in Niagara are assessed at less than $400,000, it kind of gives you a bit of an idea of where that money is going to go when it does get finalized on Thursday. Part of it was a kind of a historic underfunding of infrastructure, especially in public works, and some big hits in public health as well. And some of that due to provincial downloading dollars. What used to be funded 100% got changed to 70% from the province, and then we have to make up the other 30. So those are pretty big hits to handle this year. Good news is Northland Point. There's going to be a pilot project starting later this month, and it has to do with peritoneal dialysis. So people so far, if they had to have dialysis treatment, it had to be transported to a facility where that happens, have to go 2-3 days a week, whatever it was necessary for their care. They're going to start this pilot project where they're going to do peritoneal dialysis, which means the person can be hooked up at night while they're sleeping, and the dialysis happens And then they have the daytime to enjoy whatever activities they want, and they don't have to be transported outside of Northland Point for this very important procedure. So it's a 2-year project, or pilot project, and then they hope to spread it through all the homes in Niagara. So I thought that was really a good news story for us. And the other bit of good news is the Ombudsman report did come in, and Council unanimously made the motion, supported the motion to send it to the Niagara Regional Police for further investigation. So for those of us who sat around in this room the last term, and for all those that followed it, it seems to be the proper place for it to go now. So with that, I'm done, and Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to you all.
Merry Christmas to you.
Thanks.
Any questions to the regional councillor? Councillor Demery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Butters. Barb, I just now actually received a request to ask you a question, and that is how the proposed tax increase translates to the city tax levy. It being now 50 cents on the dollar, what will it be?
Councillor.
I would expect the ratio to be the same as it has been. Usually we figured on, it was usually 40 to 50 cents. So I expect it to be about the same.
Okay, thank you.
Unless the treasurer knows more, which
That
he
might be the
always
better one.
does.
Peter, to add to that?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Usually the city's portion, it's based on population and the assessments of each of the municipalities. Ours is normally around the 4%. And again, it also depends on individual properties within Port Colborne as to what their assessment is, as to what that increase would be. No different than what our increase would be, depends on the assessed value of the homes.
Okay, Councillor.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Regional Councillor Butters. Barb, this may be an unfair question without advance notice, so forgive me for that. If you do know, great. If you don't, we can get it later. There's been phenomenal growth in Niagara in the last year, particularly in housing. I mean, just have to look at the homes going up, Empire's building, Thorold, Confederation Heights, all that. So that's a lot of new assessment, which generally augments the need to raise taxes even further. So I don't know if you have any sense, or perhaps the mayor does, what it would have been without that growth, what that added. So you took a lot of that money in, which mitigated actually the increase. And I don't know if you wanted to venture in there, if you could get that for us. Because I know a lot of your increase has gone towards replenishing reserves that were used and not replenished. But I'm interested in what the phenomenal housing growth has done to the take at the region. Because certainly it's always helped mitigate Port Colborne at tax time, that new assessment at the region, which kind of kept the rate low. And if ours was higher, the balance at the 50% ratio was in our favor. This year, we're not going to have that advantage. It doesn't look like that we can mitigate ours with. So I don't know if you have any numbers on that.
Yeah, it runs in my mind, for some reason, $5 million runs in my mind, but does that sound right to you, Mayor Steele?
Yeah, we can get a chart for
Yeah,
for
and I'll be happy to send that over to you. But yeah, it does mitigate it, but it doesn't make up that difference, unfortunately. It does help, but not enough.
Yeah. There is a chart that we had in our one workshop that staff put together for that. And actually, it does show a trend over the last number of years. So we can work with Todd Harrison and get that back to you guys. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Because I think, Peter, as far as the tax ratios, those come out in around April, right? By the time the region sets is it the tax ratio?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, they set the tax ratios usually in around April is when we bring forward our tax rates based on, because we have to wait until the ratios come through, and that, because that could change the diversity between the different classes.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. Well, Councillor, yes.
Through your worship to Councillor Butters, or even yourself, if you can answer this. On November 28th, the region dealt with the water budget, I believe, and there was a 5.15% increase. That's going to have an effect on Port Colborne residents when we set our next water budget. Is there anything that you can, like, what was the discussion like at that table? Is there anything you can add to that?
Go ahead, Barb.
Well, it was a pretty lively discussion because some hope that it could have been spread out over more years. But the reality is that infrastructure piece is at a point where if we have a major failure, especially under the wastewater side of it, it would cost, I can't even imagine the numbers. And nobody wants that to see that happen. At one of the last meetings, they said the actual water pipes were in fairly good shape, but it's the wastewater side that is causing big concern. And I think it was Dane City is the one plant that needs a lot of work, and I can't remember.
Niagara Falls.
Niagara Falls was it? Thank you. Needs a great deal of work. So these are things that you can only put them off so long. And I can remember Councillor Bruno used to say, "Pay me now or pay me later." And that has stuck with me forever. And that happened, and that's the truth of it. And so when these things weren't budgeted for, or they were put off to now we have to pay the piper. Because if we let things just break, that will be catastrophic on many levels, and we can't afford to do that. So does that help?
Yeah.
So staff put together a 10-year plan.
Yeah.
So it is so much a year over the 10 years, which is a pretty steady increase in the rate. But as Councillor Butters said, we're so far behind the 8 ball because people came in and thought it'd be a good idea to bring in 0 tax increases or negative tax increases, 0 budget increases for water and wastewater, and that's where you stand today. And as Councillor Foster from Lincoln came out, and it holds true. The chickens have come home to roost. And you know, if you'd have done your planning in the last 8 to 10 years, where you would have taken a little bit of rate each time, you'd be way ahead of the whole scenario. But like, it's way behind, and they just kept getting rid of. Yeah, just make sure you silence your phones, please. Thank you. Can always turn it off. So, lost train of thought. That's why we always ask you to turn off your cell phones. So with this plan moving forward, Niagara, although we're tight, but there are regions and municipalities out there that are between 9 and 15% their rate increases, and some have been doing it for the last 3, 4, 5 years. They've got 10 and 15-year plans that these are huge increases compared to what we are. But I mean, as Councillor Butters said, relatively speaking, the pipes in the ground are in good shape. It's the plants that are large money goes into. Port Colborne just got some this past summer with infrastructure money that came down to a number of the wastewater plants in Niagara. Niagara Falls is going to be rebuilt, and I think that one's $84 million, somewhere in that range. So it's a lot. Yeah.
Was there any discussion on how maybe the region can, or local municipalities can help some of the residents? Because one of the things that you're saying, we all know that it is actually a huge problem. The cost is constantly going up, and a lot of people can't afford it, the water and the wastewater. So is there any discussion on a way to relieve some of that stress on residents, especially in Port Colborne?
Yeah, there wasn't specifically on that, but I know here in Port Colborne, you can pay ahead. Like, you can pay so much on your water bill, you can pay your taxes over monthly periods of time. So, you know, that helps people budget. And then there's like a reconciliation when the bills come in. So if that's of help to people, because I think when you get hit with, it's every 3 months, and you get hit with the big bill, you know, it might be easier to put so much aside and you know, send it in sooner to mitigate your bill, if that's helpful.
Yeah. Also, Counselor, just in the city of Port Colborne is, since you've been elected, is the fact that our staff is out there looking at both our wastewater side and our freshwater side with regards to leaking and things like that. We are starting to see the fruits of our labor. So within our rate, and Peter will be bringing this forward with our wastewater and water rates, is the fact that we can now see some light at the end of the tunnel, so that moving forward, we may not see our rates dropping, but we will see that they're not spiking, that it's gradually going across. Then once we get about a year to 2 years under our belt of what we're doing now, it'll really give us a track to follow with regards to how our rates can flow as the future moves forward, and how we can set our rates and the work that we're doing. And I think the same thing will happen at the region with the large amounts of money that they're going to be spending in water and wastewater, specifically on the wastewater side. In upgrading plants, building new facilities because of the growth, especially in the north end. Like Welland itself costs the region millions a year because of the inadequacies in the one portion of the Welland-Dane City system. So once those are fixed, and that's in this year's budget to get it done, helps alleviate the rate moving forward. So they've looked at that in this 10-year plan, so that as we move forward, they know what work is going to be going on, how that'll affect rates and costs going forward, so that it actually reduces certain things, but they're still going to pound away at the whole system across Niagara. So, as I said, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and yes, it is difficult at times, but you can't not do anything, because then, as Councillor Butters says, if something catastrophic happened and there's no money there, we're in trouble, because our reserves are we have lots of reserves, but they're not healthy reserves. I mean, they're big numbers, but in the whole scheme of things, when you're talking a reserve of 19 million and you got to replace a new plant at 84 million, it doesn't work out. So the whole idea is to get things back in order. And I know Councillor Bodner, when he was mayor, he went through a lot of the similar things. So, any further questions? Yes, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Butters and yourself. Further to what Councillor Beauregard was saying, I think we're in a time where issues around poverty are huge, and we're being impacted by that on a daily basis. When it comes to the gas companies, the hydro companies, there are programs in place that will assist those people that are experiencing poverty and help them with a lower amounts, or however that may go. There are various programs that just make it a little bit easier. They take a bit of the sting off. Even the provincial government has a few things that they can do. And I wonder if it isn't time that the region maybe thinks about something like that with respect to water. It's an essential utility. We have to have it. There has to be a way to take the sting off for those people who are experiencing poverty. I'm not talking about for the general public, but possibly there could be something in place there. It might be something to look at.
Councillor?
Oh, thanks, Angie. I'm happy to bring that forward along with Mayor Steele, and he actually is on Public Works, so that's kind of more in his bailiwick, but I think that's a good suggestion. Now, keeping in mind that the money that would fund that comes from all, so just keep that in mind.
But I think moving forward, Councillor, if you can allow the two of us to work at the region with this stuff. The other thing too is getting people to know that whatever help there is out there, whether it's through the province or whoever, that we make sure that people know about that. And certainly Barb and I can work on that, so we will. We're getting through our whole budget system now, but we will certainly speak to senior staff with regards to it and see what they know about what's going on out there and go from there. So we'll bring something back once everything's done and our budget's done. Good, thank you. Well, that's it, guys. So councillors' items, councillors' issues. I'll start with my right this time. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one thing to bring forward here. On December 3rd, the Ward 4 had a meeting. Ron Bodner and I hosted a meeting at the Bethel Community Center. It was well attended, with in excess of 60 people that attended there. Most of them were from Ward 4, but there were some that were from other wards that came out to see what was happening. We had some speakers from other areas. We had Ryan Bassey from the Niagara region attend the meeting, and he spoke about the quality of wells and the cistern waters and the importance of sampling of those. He brought sample bottles, and I think they were all gone before the end of the night. That was a good addition to the meeting. Also from Port Colborne, there were a number of people that were there. Dave Schultz, the city planner, and Travis Morden, the bylaw enforcement officer, were there. They answered questions that were posed to them, and Travis stood up and gave a little bit of a presentation in regards to enforcement and bylaws that were active in the area of Ward 4. And so this all added to the meeting. So it was the impression of the meeting was that those in attendance liked it and would like to have them on a regular basis, even more so than what we've had them on. And having the city staff and other people from agencies was recognized as being a very positive, informative to the success of the meeting as well. And they were greatly appreciated by the attendees. They found that the subject matter of the meeting was pertinent, and it was important for them to see people that were taking action, like Ryan and Travis and Dave, in front of them, so that they could do a one-on-one contact, remove the middleman, if you will. They liked the format of the meeting because it ran from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, and we could actually have continued it because the exchange was very open, and people felt free to express themselves. There was no combativeness, there was no retaliations, or there was no argumentative nature of the meeting. It was all down to earth. So they liked the meeting, and it allowed for free exchange and issues of discussion. So it was very positive on that part. There were 19 issues that were raised that we were talking to and had some discussions on. And those issues and Ron and I will deal with those with the various departments. They weren't immediate issues, but some were suggestions of improvements, some were questions of understanding. And that was the biggest part about it, is the understanding that the residents took from the meeting about what was happening and how decisions were being made and those things. So other than that, last week was uneventful.
Thank you, Councillor. And I spoke to one of our farm owners last night at an event, and he thought it was a great evening. I thought it was a good addition to have staff there. So great. Thank you guys for that. Councillor Demeray?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to let everyone know that Hydro One has initiated a class environmental assessment for the Port Colborne transfer station at Durham and Davis Street. So everyone in the immediate area will be receiving letters in the coming week. But if anyone has any questions, just please feel free to forward them to me, and I'll make sure they get to the right person to get answers. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It probably should come up under staff responses, but if I get operations a comment on the email that we all received regarding the railway crossing on Sugarloaf Street from Stephen.
Sure. Stephen?
Through you, Your Worship, to Council. We so at the last meeting, I mentioned that I would touch base with Trillium after the fact to see where we were with the upgrades to the Sugarloaf and Elm Street Railway. So we did touch base. We both kind of decided on moving it to the spring. To try to get this completed in December isn't very reasonable, and I think we're just going to be having the same conversation again at the end of this month. So the right thing to do in this situation is push it to spring. We'll have all of the concrete tracks, the actual panels ready to go and installed. We'll be shutting down the whole intersection for about 3 days or so while we actually do it to try to expedite the work. So that will be happening come April.
Okay. Good, Councillor? Great, thank you. Councillor? Okay, Councillor Borger? Councillor Dash?
Okay, well, thank you for that. Through Mr. Mayor to whoever, I was talking about lights earlier. So I have a fellow on Barrack Road, and 867 Barrack Road, he had a light on the pole. It's gone. It's been gone. He'd like to know maybe he could get it back again. Kind of dark down the bottom of the hill there on the west end.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's an operation. Okay, thank you, Steve. You know I walk, eh? Because I try to keep healthy here, so.
I couldn't tell.
Yeah. So I'm down at the park today, or no, actually yesterday, and left over from the storm, there's a whack of wood in the boat dock area, or the guys are launching their boats and stuff like that. A lot of it's washed up towards Northland Point and that, and I just wonder if maybe we're going to be cleaning up any lumber, or that's not our problem, but there's a bunch of it there. It's all been pushed up from the storm. I just wonder if maybe, is that yours, Ashley? I don't even know.
Yeah. Ashley or Nicole?
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Dench, yes, the Parks crew does have that on a work plan order.
Okay, because there are some pretty big logs out there. I think we have somebody sleeping in our band shell. Noticed them there the last couple weeks there, and hate to boot them out, but I don't think that's the place to be sleeping. So if we could have a little look at that, please. And once again on my walks, I'm crossing the bridge on Clally Street just before where the weir is and whatnot, and if you look off to the left on that little island portion there, there's a whole bunch of leftovers from somebody that was moved in for the summer. Basically just garbage. Looks like crap. There's quite a bit of it there. The fence has been cut, so these people have gone in, did what they wanted to do for several months, and just leave their garbage behind. So I'm sure that's a Seaway issue, not a city issue. But if someone could look into that, we could forward that.
Staff could do that.
Yeah, and other than that, Merry Christmas from Ward 3, and thank you so much.
She's after the parade, Counselor. I find it hard that you walk a lot because you were riding in the truck most of the time on Saturday night. Oh, yeah. Well, you're probably eating it, I guess. That's why you got to walk. No, thank you, Frank. Counselor Kalela.
Well, I just have a couple items, Mr. Mayor. First of all, speaking of lights, which I've been doing a lot of, I actually want to thank Steve. I know a lot of the lights have been repaired. I'm so thankful, and I know I have actually heard from several people have contacted me just to say they received your message saying what's going to be done and in addition to what's been done, and they were very pleased just to get the knowledge to know that it is all happening and it will be fixed. So thank you. And secondly, it's interesting, Saturday morning, I woke up, I don't know if any of you have seen these little signs. I had one on my car Saturday morning, and it says, lock it or lose it. Yep. And I'm pleased because I live downtown, and this is from Niagara Regional Police. It was there Saturday morning to let me know that I passed the test. My car was locked. There were nothing visible, nothing going on, and it gives the name of the police officer, Niagara Regional Police, and it was 6 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. They put it on my windshield. So I think it's a great program. So Mr. Mayor, if you could thank them on our behalf, I think it's this kind of stuff that will help to deter people.
Yeah, it's Niagara Regional Police has a program, and what they do is they'll take an area of town, they'll move around the whole city, pending calls, of course, and then I know they did Olga Drive because my son got one and his car was open. So lock it or lose it, right? So, but thank you. No, because yeah. So you'll see that. So you may get some calls, guys, but it's every once in a while as you know, if they're a little less quiet in certain nights, then they'll go around and they'll literally check doors on cars. So great program. Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a heads up to Harry, you may want to declare conflict on this. I'm going to talk about the quarry issue that came up at our Ward 4 meeting. If it comes to, I'll be asking direction from council on this if you so choose. Anyways, Harry, thank you for chairing that Ward 4 meeting. It was very well done. Your screen and everything else, just, you know, it had it right in front of everybody, and city staff were fabulous that came out, and the region staff, that was great. One of the issues that did come up from a number of people there This has nothing to do with the quarry issue we're dealing with now. But as you may know, the quarry is expanding. And people want to know what our role as a city is in that expansion in regards to noise, dust, well issues, people that may see a drop in their well or lose it. And just recently, recently, the provincial government has taken a lot of powers away from the municipalities in dealing with quarries. And I just wonder whether, Mr. Mayor, whether we could issue a directive to staff that would lay out what we can do as a city, and also who else is responsible for issues like wells and that, so that we can get ahead of this, have the information there. We don't have to react. Like, if there's blasting and it's extremely loud, which happens once in a while, does the city have a role in that, or is it simply another agency? So if we had that all ahead of time, I think we would serve our residents well. So, Mr. Mayor, through you, the acting CAO, is it just direction to staff to come up with something? There isn't an immediate hurry for it, but I think sometime in the new year, if we could get that information, it would be helpful.
Yeah, so I'll go through CAO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Bodnar. Yes, that direction can be made to staff, and we have a directors meeting next Monday, and I will raise it at the directors meeting to have that discussion and see if we can, within the appropriate staff, as to bring them back some type of report to council, knowing what authorities the city has versus what other agencies, and that I think it's something that we can have. So we'll have that discussion and see if there's something that we can bring back to council.
Sure, that'd be great. And also, if there are other agencies, can we get the contact information for that, so that someone doesn't have to look that up? It'll just be something we could either post on the website or hand out or something like that. So
We can just
make a direction.
CAO can just take that as direction.
Good.
So he'll bring that up to that meeting.
Yep.
We'll make sure it's on the agenda.
Great.
All right. Okay, Peter? Good, thank you.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you. On to item 14, consideration of items. Item number 1, Councillor Bagu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Engineering and Operations Department, Engineering Division Report 2019-176, subject Skelton Municipal Drain Meeting to consider.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I get a seconder to that? Councillor Wells. We do have a presentation. We have Brandon Widener, PNG of Spreet and Associates. Yeah, just press the red button there. Thank you.
So there's a map on the screen. It's somewhat blurry. I'm assuming most of you received the digital copy of this report. You have it in your minutes. I'm sure she's trying her best. So we're here tonight for the Skelton Drain. Just so everyone's aware, the Skelton Drain is located in the area of Highway 58 and south of Forks Road. So everyone has a general idea where that is. It touches a little piece of Welland, and it goes in the Wainfleet. So this was a Section 78 report. There was a number of owners that signed a request for an improvement of this drain, because this is an existing municipal drain. And just so everyone's clear, this was initiated in 2011. And at that time, it was also initiated with a drain to the north, which was called the Brown's Tap Drain, and another drain to the west called the South Feeder Drain. The Brown's Tap Drain was a drain in Welland, which has failed and is not proceeding forward. The South Feeder, as far as I'm aware, is still moving forward. So that's why the bylaw that under the authorization is rather old. So more about the Skelton Drain. This is an existing municipal drain. In 1919, the piece in Wainfleet was constructed. And later on in 1939, the piece in Port Colborne was constructed, all the way down to the Biederman Drain. So when you're looking at this drainage works, the Biederman Drain is the downstream end, and then that drain is on the east side of Highway 58, and that then, the Biederman Drain is a whole other drainage system, which the municipality has recently appointed us to work on, which is draining the Wainfleet Bog. So essentially, the drain we are dealing with here is essentially 80 years old, and no work's been done on that with an engineer's report since. There's been maintenance done to it, most recently in the township of Wainfleet. Any maintenance in the city of Port Colborne, I don't think, has been for some time. So in early 2019, this year, in February, we had a meeting with all the owners, including the ones in Wainfleet and the one in Welland, to discuss what they are looking for in a new drainage report and if they are, seeking any new culverts or any improved drainage. One thing to note is there is a large portion of this watershed owned by one landowner, Triple G Farms Inc. So they were there and they have a number of properties. So what we have designed with this report is some new lane crossings. So there's some new road crossings and improved drainage in that we are cleaning the existing ditch and removing some sediment. We had another meeting in October 16th to discuss everything that's being proposed, including the cost, and then this report was filed a couple weeks after that, I believe on October 29th. So with that being said, there's another page on your minutes, page 2, which shows the profile that shows the culverts being replaced. There's one culvert under Nugent Road, which is a road owned by the city of Port Colborne from our records. There's another one on Town Line Road, which is shared between yourselves and Wainfleet, and another one on Youngs Road, which is Wainfleet. The total cost of the project works, as we have, is about $240,000. There's a couple schedules in here, which explain how those costs are derived and how we have assessed them out. Schedule A is an allowance. The allowances are for damages to crops and lands. And then there is also another section for right-of-way, which ensures the municipality has an access corridor for future maintenance along the drain. Schedule B is the cost estimate, which gives you an idea of the itemized breakdown of each of the items, which is mainly the road culverts. Schedule C is the assessment for construction purposes, which shows you who is paying what and which portion. One thing to take note, there's a number of special assessments. Special assessments in this case are A, to the Ministry of Transportation. There's another one to the City of Port Colborne for the lane culvert or the new road culvert under Nugent Road. Special assessments are assessed actual costs. So if they somehow come in way over our estimate, the city pays actual costs, and that's broke down in the report. There's another schedule, which is D, which is maintenance, which shows the percentage which future maintenance will be allocated. When in the future, when I am gone and your drainage superintendent is doing maintenance without the engineer, how they assess it out. In the back of all that, there is a schedule that says schedule of net assessment for information purposes only. That shows the agricultural properties all on this drain get a 1/3 grant from the province. That grant is shown on that page, as well as their allowances. It shows their net costs of what they actually have to pay. And if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Councilors? Councilor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. When you mentioned those properties east of 58 Highway, I noticed that there is, I don't know if it is a drain or not, or part of the drainage. Does it not go under Elm by Mud Lake and out to the Welland Canal? Is that part of this?
Somewhat. That's the Biederman Drain.
Still Biederman, okay.
So if you look on your map, which is lost in space here, it turns right in here. And this is the Biederman.
Right.
And then the Biederman goes all the way back, the Wainfleet back behind the quarry. You guys just appointed us on that. That's a much larger drainage system than this.
Yeah, huge.
Yes.
Okay, Councilor. Any other questions, Councilor? Councilor Cloud.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, when you say that if the costs are in addition, those are actual costs on those assessments, and that if they come in higher, that the extra assessment would come to the town, is there not a contract put out previously with a quote on it that would be, we could hold it to, or?
Yeah, but that's after this. This is an estimate, not a tender. So this meeting tonight's see, consideration. In January, there'll be a quarter revision, which is when you discuss the cost of the report. If that goes through and there's no appeals, then the city will tender it.
Okay.
And maybe Elena should speak more to that. They will tender it, and then that cost will be received. I have an inclination maybe that the municipality is constructing this themselves in partnership with Wainfleet.
Okay.
So that should alleviate your worries of the cost coming in astronomically high.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilor? Anything to add in? No? Okay. Now, we do have questions from the public because it is on a municipal drain. Anybody here in regards to this have any questions? Okay, great. No further questions. Brandon, thank you.
No, thank you.
So we're also looking for 2 councillors to be appointed as a member of the Skeleton Municipal Drain Court of Revision, and a third councillor to be appointed as an alternate, to be tentatively scheduled for January 21st, 2020, to be confirmed with the adjoining municipalities. We have some volunteers, or do we want some voluntold? Councillor Bagu and Councillor Wells. Councillor Bruno will do the alternate. Sure. Yeah, so the last quarter revision was Harry and I because Ronnie was away. So the alternate had to go, but nobody showed up, so it was fine. Noting that, councillors, so we have Councillor Bagu and Councillor Wells, and then Councillor Bruno as an alternate. Any further questions to those? Seeing that, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you, councillors. Item number 2, Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Community and Economic Development Department, Parks and Recreation Division, Report 2019-190, subject, presentation of Parks and Recreation Master Plan Draft.
Thank you, councillor. Second to this, Councillor Wells. Ashley and Nicole. I'll let you guys start.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's with great pleasure that we present the draft Parks and Recreation Master Plan to Council for your review and consideration. As you know, we went through, the consultants will provide an overview of the public consultation process and everything, but as I say, this represents a lot of time, effort, consultation with staff, the public. It was very comprehensive, and we're very happy to bring it forward this evening. And so now, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to turn it over to the consultants.
Great, thank you. Just press the red button there and you're all set.
Thank you, Your Worship. Members of council, staff, members of the public. My name is Pierre Chauvin. I'm with MHBC Planning. With me as well as Julie Welch, who's with MHBC Planning. I send regrets from Raymond Osmond, who was with Raymond Consulting, who is also with our consulting team. But it's with great pleasure that we're before you this evening to present to you our draft Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And before I begin, I would like to take this opportunity to thank your staff, particularly Ashley and Nicole, and Karen Walsh, who have been instrumental and very helpful throughout this project, and certainly have made sure that we have moved ahead on this project as timely as possible. And it's hard to believe it's almost been a year since we were retained. We've done a lot of consultation, as Ashley has noted, we're certainly very happy to come forward with you with our draft report, over almost 200 plus pages. I'm sure you've all read it cover to cover, and over 100 recommendations. And by no means don't take the number of recommendations as any indication of there's an issue here. It's just really, I think we've had a lot of great feedback, and we have a lot of great ideas that we hope that your staff can carry forward in the coming years. So I've got a few slides, and I'll try to go through these quickly, because I'm sure you've read all of these and you have a number of questions for me. But what I'll try to do is quickly go over some of what we did. As you know and read, this is a study that is meant to identify your needs and priorities to 2030 over the next 10 years. And it's really meant to help decide and guide decision-making for yourselves as staff bring forward the various recommendations in our plan. So we've also tried to provide a long-term direction on all aspects of park recreation and trails, your facilities, and as well as your programs and events. And as some of you recall, we did have a facilitated session with you. I should also do a shout out to our facilitator, Bronwyn Wilton, who was there, who facilitated that session for your canal days. But at the end of the day, our hope is that this document will not sit on a shelf and collect dust. It's meant to be a flexible document to adapt with change, and if things evolve over time, then you can always come back and revisit these things. As Ashley noted, there was extensive consultation with the public as well as staff. We had 2 facilitated open house meetings. We had working sessions with some of your stakeholders, so that would be some of your sports organizations, community groups. We did initiate an online survey and had a prize that was awarded to one of the participants. We had over 370 responses, and I would comment that for a community this size, this is pretty typical for in terms of a response rate that we've seen from other communities. So some may say this seems a little low, but I think this is, from what we've seen, it's a pretty typical response. And when you extrapolate it out to the number of families that these respondents represent, it's almost 1,200 individuals. So it does equate to a lot, and it's actually, if you look at as a representation, your population, it represents almost 6.5% of your entire population. But again, the survey wasn't meant to be a statistical survey. It was really just another point of contact, getting information and taking that information and comparing it to all the other information that we've heard throughout the consultation. You'll recall almost over a year ago, we met with some of you individually as well as the mayor, and just to get some of your thoughts and feedback. We've even had facilitated discussions with your staff, either at the management level or even on the people who are at the boots on the ground or interfacing with the public every day. And we also had a facilitated session, as I noted, with respect to canal days. So all in all, it was a very comprehensive consultation program. There is a separate compendium document to this, almost equally as thick, that summarizes the actual details and information. So if you do want the actual results of the survey, for example, it's all in a separate document that staff has, but we've tried to summarize that information and rely on it in terms of our recommendations in this final document. But as we went through the analysis and the information that we've heard, it came clear that there were 5 general themes that emerged, and these are them throughout the consultation and information gathering. These are accessibility, inclusiveness, partnerships and collaboration, communication and engagement, innovation and building capacity, so trying to stay on top of current trends and building capacity within your staff and your facilities that you have, and optimizing of infrastructure. So what we tried to do then is take these 5 general themes and summarized all our 100+ recommendations under these 5 general themes. And I should say that this generally aligns. There is a broader Canadian national recreation framework that many Parks and Rec departments follow, and these general themes follow that sort of framework as well. So let me begin in terms of, I'll try to go through these quickly, but under accessibility and inclusiveness, and this isn't all of them, we just took a snapshot of all the recommendations, sort of the top few. So create a park and facility guidelines that exceed AODA standards and implement an inclusive design. And what we hope that is one of the recommendations as well is to develop in concert with perhaps your planning department some urban design guidelines where some of these AODA standards with respect to the park designs can be incorporated into that particular design manual. Ensure physical accessibility measures are incorporated into all your existing and new facilities and considered for all recreational programming. So there are actually a number of facilities, as you may know, that are actually, there are some challenges with respect to accessibility. We've identified some of those, so there should be a direct effort to try to improve some of those issues. Develop an active aging strategy that focuses on getting older adults into programs and facilities. As you know, we are an aging society. This isn't a phenomenon unique to Port Colborne, but what we're hoping to do is develop a strategy where we try to target activities and programs that get active aging or people, older adults, to come out and engage in participation from beginning all the way out to the end of the continuum of their lifespan. So. Support the development of Sports Council Alliance. This is something that other communities have implemented. It's really an opportunity to get many of your sports organizations together and pool their resources, for example, and bring, say, experts into training that everybody could probably benefit from, whether it's referees or coaching or those kind of things. So it's something that we don't see your staff running. It's more something that they would facilitate, and those organizations would run with it. And it's been quite successful in a number of other municipalities. Establish a regular maintenance schedule and work plan to guide your parks and facility improvements based on a parks inventory, and I'm referring to an appendix. And we've prepared, as part of this work program, a detailed inventory of your parks, which your staff have never had before. And with our staff, we've gone out and critiqued your parks, provided some recommendations with respect to things that can be improved, from play structures, lighting, garbage disposal, etc. So it's essentially a work plan unto itself with respect specifically to your parks. That has also been incorporated into, and I'll speak to this later, so the mapping parks inventory that we've also developed as part of this work plan. Prepare and implement an accessibility mandate or terms of reference, again, to help guide on how you provide facilities that are fully accessible. And we make reference to, there are other municipalities, for example, the City of Barrie has a great example with respect to providing some terms of reference in terms of every time you look at a facility, how do you ensure that you are meeting the sort of accessibility requirements. Promoting healthy behaviors at city-run events. This can be through your programming, through your marketing, just how you operate, even provide healthy foods and healthy lifestyle. So a complete look at how you operate as a corporation and how you deliver your services or programs that always continuously promote healthy lifestyles. This was through the survey, one area that people thought that Port Colborne was not really a healthy place to live, and hence there was a need to create some healthy programming. Explore new ways to encourage and build awareness of Port Colborne's spontaneous and drop-in recreation activities. So again, through the survey and consultation, we heard a lot of responses saying they were not aware of certain things and programs that the municipality is offering. So we've also made a number of recommendations with respect to that kind of awareness. So next is with respect to partnerships and collaboration. Probably one of the bigger ones that we've identified was engaging in discussions with the YMCA. to not only discuss their internal process and policies and procedures, but looking at ways of updating your existing joint agreement with the YMCA and perhaps reopening that agreement to look at opportunities to provide better cross-programming between the two, the city and the YMCA. Number 2, develop and maintain a Parks and Recreation Partnership Framework. As part of our document, we have provided a number of appendices and tools that we think staff can use, one of which is this partnership framework. And so it's really a tool, an assessment tool, to determine whether is a partnership a good partnership. Not all partnerships are great partnerships, and whenever you get into an agreement or a partnership with somebody, each party has to be bringing something to the table. And so what we've tried to do is provide a sort of an objective framework for which staff can evaluate these and bring these forward to you and hopefully present them such that you can make a decision. Always engaging in discussions with interested private and nonprofit organizations to facilitate programming and services, particularly at the Roselawn Center for the Arts. So I know there have been discussions and engagements with some public and nonprofit organizations, and we certainly, I think that's probably one of the recommendations you could probably almost check off today. Partner, collaborate with health, education, and policing, justice agencies, to address the concerns associated with needle debris in your public spaces. This was one particular area of, frankly, in all the studies we've done, surprisingly, we never really heard something like this. And this was one particular area that we thought we needed particular attention because it was heard loud and clear. And we've made some recommendations with respect to that. Communication and engagement. I know you do have wayfinding signage. There was certainly discussion with respect to improving that wayfinding signage, particularly with your parks and trails. So we see that as an opportunity to develop a parks and trails wayfinding strategy. And in looking at number 2, it's kind of tied together, installing wayfinding entrances signs at key focal points or park entrances along your trails. So when people are traveling on your trails, they know where to go. There's perhaps a key map they can stop and look at, and they know where your public facilities are, and they can enjoy your facilities. Because certainly cycling is, and through and across your municipality is a huge activity. Establish a department-wide vision and mission. It's certainly an area that we think that needs to be done. This is something that staff could orchestrate. And really the theme for this is for staff to develop and to define what are your core services. What are you truly about? And what are you trying to provide to the community? Because if you don't have a definition of what your core services are, it's hard to establish, okay, where do we spend our public dollars? When there's a finite amount of dollars to go around, we need to decide, okay, is this related to our core service or not? And so I think it's very important that your department undertakes such a mission and define their vision and their mission, and as part of that, their core values. Number 4, develop and maintain an integrated parks and recreation website tool. As I mentioned, we did this detailed inventory, and it's now tied to this tool, which your staff have and your GIS department now have. So hopefully that'll be launched in some way that people will be able to access and visually see and be able to click on through your website, various parks, see what's at those facilities, what's for rent, what's not, and et cetera. And it could be tied to, as you move along, it could be tied to other databases and whatnot. So, number 5, prepare and continually update your comprehensive database of stakeholders from recreation organizations. Again, it's really important to keep in touch with all your variety of stakeholders. Not only stakeholders, but we also mention your volunteer base. Have a similar database of your volunteers and whatnot to continuously ensure that they're up to date on what's going on and make sure that they're there to help you. And there's a continuous communication between the department and those organizations using your facilities and parks. Adopt a department-wide signage and advertising policy to increase your sponsorship opportunities. So again, we've provided a sample policy in the document. With respect to innovation and building capacity, we're suggesting that there is a need to prepare a broader, we originally thought that there was a need to do a Nickel Beach master plan or development plan, and that's number 2. But really part of that, because Nickel Beach and the waterfront is so important to the community, it really needs to be done comprehensively as part of your the canal, the marina, and all your other beaches and parks along the waterfront. There really needs to be some kind of cohesive overall waterfront plan tied together. And as part of that, yes, Nickel Beach is part of it, and it is an important jewel in your community. But how do we deal with everything to tie together? Because it is an important asset that you really need to think about how it all works together, how various activities work together and can benefit from one another. So skipping over to 3 then, consider preparing an events and culture, sports, and tourism strategy. Sport tourism is absolutely huge. There is no question that it is such a growing part of our parks and recreation, and it's a huge part of our tourism industry. And to capitalize on that, and I don't have to say it, you know what it's all about with Canal Days and the amount of revenue that it can bring. But the opportunities there with with sports and tourism and various games, provincial and national games that are out there, there's opportunities to generate economic development through spin-offs, through your businesses and whatnot. So there is a tremendous opportunity there, and we see that as something that needs some kind of level of strategy to try to attract these organizations, attract these events, and have, and this ties into our number 4, having someone who's specifically geared towards that and looking at developing that. That would be hiring a tourism product development specialist. So that's somebody who would deal specifically with those events and try to develop and organize those events. Because it is, it's a very important aspect, and there's huge opportunities here. And it does, frankly, take a lot of staff resources and takes a lot of time, and you really need somebody to have that time devoted to it. And number 5, this relates to sort of building and incorporating emerging sport and recreation activities into program offerings. So always looking at new sports and developing sports. Pickleball, it's a huge growing activity across the province. We can't build the pickleball courts fast enough. So always looking for those opportunities and looking to maximize the efficiency of your current facilities whenever you're rebuilding or repurposing some of your facilities, to look at those opportunities or those growing sports activities to see if you can try to incorporate them into your designs. Number 6, prepare a Canal Days business plan. With primary focus on identifying a host organization. As I mentioned earlier, there was a facilitated session. It was a good session, a good brainstorming session, but really I think what it needs is a proper business plan, and it involves, and we enumerate a number of things or steps that would be included in that business plan. So I'm not going to get into the detail, but we do outline some of the aspects that business plan should cover. Invest in trail enhancements or connections through the preparation of a trails and bicycle master plan. So this could even be tied, I mentioned earlier about the trails wayfinding, that could be, those 2 aspects could be tied together. And as part of that, develop a trails code of conduct for all trail users in conjunction with neighboring municipalities. We've heard a lot of concerns with respect to multiple users of the trails and some of the conflicts that have occurred. I think what needs to occur is some kind of level of code of conduct developed through that process. And ultimately it will mean some form of enforcement or education along the way. But that, again, could be developed through the Trails Master Plan. Develop a long-term growth strategy for the Sugarloaf Marina. This is another huge, important asset in your community, and we see this as something that needs to be done to ensure the longevity and planning for this facility. And finally, adopt a project feasibility framework for all potential infrastructure projects. So what this means is, again, as part of our appendices, we provided a framework or a checklist for your staff when they're evaluating asks from the various community groups or for expansions of things. They can ensure they go through this checklist in an objective way to analyze how efficient and does this meet all the criteria. And in terms of does it make sense to move forward with this particular expansion or improvement to the facility. And lastly, under this theme, optimization of infrastructure, number one, we have identify opportunities to maximize multi-use recreational space at the Valley Health and Wellness Center to increase the supply of multi-use and multifunctional rooms. I think some of you participated in some of the stakeholder sessions that we had as part of this report, and that came up through some of those discussions and is looking at your existing space within that facility. Perhaps there's opportunities within that existing facility to maximize and optimize the use during downtimes and whatnot. So the intent throughout this whole document has been to try to look at what you have first before you're going out and looking at new facilities to expand and your capital resources. Review and update your operating agreements with the rural community centers. There's a few rural community centers out there that we think need to be revisited, in particular how those agreements are being operated and perhaps even have agreements with these particular community centers. So that was key. Require all organizations that are renting and utilizing any of your facilities to report annually on the number of registrants and participants. Again, this is just making sure that people are accountable and that your staff are accountable and that you are ensuring that your facilities are being properly run and managed. If deemed appropriate, consider repurposing and disposing some of the parkland that is underutilized to meet your parkland standards. This could mean even scaling back on the amount of land that you have to not manage it, for example. It could just go naturalized and those kind of things. So again, we've identified some of those spaces for consideration. It was beyond the scope for us to go and say this particular park, but we did identify certain areas where you should be looking at to perhaps scale back. And obviously continue to monitor your population and your growth projections, whether you're and to see how you're continuously providing facilities and programs that meet your population demand. So that is a quick snapshot of the 100+ recommendations. These aren't all of them, obviously, but just an idea of what most of them are entail. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have now.
Good, thank you, Pierre. Any questions, Councillor? Councillor Bodnar.
Okay, I'll try to direct them to you because it might involve staff at some point too, I think. Okay. So I'm concerned about the rural community centers. And in there is a matrix for determining whether, and I'm sorry, I forgot my paper at home. I had all this wrote on, but that matrix, if you fail 2 of the 8 or so questions that were put to that center, then it was deemed to be not needed or not useful, or it should be done away with. To me, that was absolutely set up to fail on those community centers. I don't know, I think it was on, what would it be, on page 180 something of your report or something in there?
Yeah, so the facility, you're referring to the facility condition index? Is that
yeah, can you just run us through that thought process, because I'll have some more questions on that. Thanks.
Sure. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to answer that question, I guess, first of all, these are tools that we're offering your staff to consider. So this is not cast in stone. So that would be my first comment. But it is anything that's, there is a scoring matrix. And every score has a different weighting, and if it scores anything over 50%, for example, then it should be, there should be a need to, in this case, decommission that facility or repurpose it. If it scores under 50%, then it's the reverse. You reinvest in that facility. Now, that threshold, you can change that. Like, we're not, again, this is just a suggestion. It's not something that we're suggesting that if staff want to change those numbers and those weighting, then that's up to staff if they would like to do that. But what we tried to do, though, is provide a tool that provides an objective way of evaluating your facilities and whether there should be reinvestment or perhaps it's time to let it go.
Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So now, can I ask a question of staff on this same line?
Certainly.
So we're being asked tonight, a 200 and some page report that we got on Thursday of last week, I think, to then give staff the go-ahead to implement the recommendations and also bring then stuff to the capital and operating budget process. So how, through you to staff, Ashley and Nicole, how are we going to treat those community centers? Are we going to take what's here, or are we going to have separate, are we going to sit down separately with either council or councilors or something to discuss this? Because I'm not comfortable passing this the way it is, having not talked to those community centers. So I'm just trying to get the process here. You know, I like the idea, but I'm scared of the box we're putting these community centers into. So,
Ashley?
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodnar. Yes, the process for decommissioning a property or disposal of land would include a public process before anything was, and a fulsome council discussion before any of those types of decisions are made. I think as Pierre was mentioning, the intention here is to provide staff with tools in which to gather further information and evaluate existing and potentially new partnerships into the future. And this certainly isn't a decision with regard to the long-term or the future of the rural community centers at this time. So those items will be brought forward to council for consideration and decision, and that would include a public process.
okay.
You all set, Councillor? Okay. Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Worship. I wasn't going to bring this up, but Councillor Bodnar brought up an interesting thing. I think sometimes when it says never or fails a matrix, there ought to be an asterisk every time those words are used, because it also comes back to the flavor of the community, the flavor of the neighborhood, why that might be a good idea. Might not make certain benchmarks, but that doesn't mean it can't stand alone. I am concerned, having watched a council meeting that I happened to be at years ago, where a master plan came to the table, and I was one of the presenters, but not to that issue. And I remember it because I had to sit and wait an hour and a half because the discussion went around that by passing the master plan, we were adopting everything that was in it in the way it was laid out. And so I think you can adopt the direction and the master plan in that, but still have that offline or online conversation and change that. But just my 2 cents worth on that, because you brought it. They're consulting to municipalities. Have you done work in what I'll call the sort of partnership field? I'm not quite sure if that's what you're referring to. So right now you're looking at the scope of work of city-provided facilities and programming, which begs the question that there is another part. And I'm just wondering if you could speak to that and expand on it and what can be done there where you've seen it work.
last part is challenging. Through you, Mr. Mayor, maybe if I can take this chance to reiterate, these, as you mentioned, the recommendations in here, it's not, I believe the recommendations is to endorse the report, and the intent is that staff, as they'll bring forward these individual recommendations forward for implementation, and you'll have an opportunity then to decide on how you want to proceed forward on those various recommendations. So it's not a blank check, so to speak. So it's the intent is that these things will here's the recommendations. Staff, you come forward, and we've tried to provide some short, medium, long-term goals to meet, and so hopefully staff, as they work through this, the recommendations, will be bringing forward various initiatives that are in line with this master plan. With respect to your question, absolutely, recreation is not a single person, a single entity, and in fact, to do it properly, the municipality should not be a provider of recreation. They're really more an enabler, a facilitator. And so they should be there facilitating organizations and helping other organizations who do these things better. There's no business in the municipality, for example, running a hockey program. You know, they could be there to facilitate the program and have the ice surface, have the facilities, but it's up to those individual organizations to provide that. Similarly with, a huge partner in your community is the YMCA. It may not have been a good partnership so far, but I think that's why we're suggesting there's a need to reopen and revisit that agreement, because we've heard it pretty loud and clear from consultation that something's not working and needs to be revisited. But that's just one example, but certainly there's other organizations, programs, private fitness clubs that provide other things and other partnerships, nonprofit organizations, arts and culture groups that do these things. They do these things really well. And why would the municipality get into that business? You shouldn't be. And so, again, I come back to you're defining your core values and your core principles. What are they? And that's important for your department to do. And when they start making decisions, and it doesn't make sense for us to be investing and getting into a partnership with somebody if it doesn't align with our core values. And so I can't, like I said, in terms of good partnerships, I mentioned the Y, there are a lot of good examples of good Y programs that partnered with municipalities. And in the sense that you have particularly even a lot of multi-use facilities, libraries, recreation spaces, arenas, all clustered and bundled under one roof. And so, and even health services. So you've got public health, you've got your social services, you got your libraries. It's all, so there's opportunities to partner not only with those private organizations, but other departments and other organizations that offer similar services that you can benefit from that cross-programming and cross sort of cultural aspects. So you could go to a facility, drop Johnny off to the hockey game while you go read a book in the library, for example. So you see a lot of those kind of partnerships and arrangements. So there are opportunities, and what we're saying is we're trying, within this document, trying to provide a framework for evaluating those partnerships. Because not, like I said earlier, not all partnerships are good.
Councillor?
Thank you. This is more directed to Ashley and Nicole. We talked about a 10-year master plan, and I like the idea of a plan, but a 10-year plan can be done in 5 years or 8 years, just depends what you want to throw at it. And mostly being funding, but otherwise energy, people power, that kind of thing. I'll implore you tonight to commit to everything that comes forward in Parks and Recreation, that it's looked at through the lens of this. To the extent that I would like to see in all those reports, I'll remind you if you don't, but I'd like to see whether it fits the plan. So I don't know if we can make that a line item on Parks and Rec issues, but we've just spent this money, this amount of time, and I don't want to see items that come forward in isolation. And I want to come with an example. When I first got back on this time, I took a ride around all our facilities, and I looked at the state of the tennis facility. Unbeknownst to me, there was money available, came I think partially with the government grant, and we repaved and surfaced that. I think if we'd have had this plan, and your point about maximizing existing utilization, we'd have not put $65,000 there. Because nobody knows at the end of Helen Street from out of town that's now the back of a storage facility that used to be an arena. So what I'm getting at is let's not make some moves in particular that might be in year 8 of your plan, but trust me, not all of us are going to remember what's in year 8, but you are, because you're charged with that. I just don't want to be spending good money after bad. And I'm not saying that you want to, but if we don't look at this through that lens, there's a good chance we could. And, that's my stump speech on master plans. Don't let them sit on a shelf, but use them every single day you talk about Parks and Rec. Thank you, Worship. That's all I had.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. First, let me say thank you so much for all the work that you've done on this. This is, I will echo everything Councillor Bruno said. This is an incredible plan, and I'm really glad to see this finally happening. I took the plan and I went through 10 years or 11 years of comments from the public on all the facilities the city has and all the things they felt we should be doing, and not one thing was missing. Everything that had been said to me over 11 years was here in this plan. So that's really a good thing. I can't see why the public wouldn't be very happy with what's in here. I do share concerns with Councillor Bodner, though, with respect to the community centers and how that will come forward. And I would understand that there may be some confusion about us endorsing this and it looking like we're just saying you can go and do anything you want now, and whatever you bring to us we'll have to accept because we've already endorsed it. But I think the language in the second paragraph here that says that items for council approval, that's how the items will come forward, for council approval each time. So I think that kind of clears it up, and we'll be okay with that. But I just wanted to say thank you to everybody involved, because I think this is a good plan and it will allow us to move forward in a reasonable and logical manner.
Thank you. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Pierre. This is a great and hard work went into this, and it was a great tool that we can utilize going forward on this here. I have just one simple question. It's in regards to you obviously have done a lot of engagement to create this document with the public. However, we stand at this moment in time and the public hasn't seen it. They haven't seen the product. I know it came out last week. I made, in our presentation at the Ward 4, we showed everybody where it was. I have received a number of phone calls asking me where can we find this. But in your opinion, would it not be of a benefit to engage the public maybe one more time, to just give them an opportunity to see the product that you generated and how valuable this will be for their future? Because this is for their future, and it's important that they understand what this will do for them.
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Worship, thank you for the comment. And before I begin, I do really need to, and thank you for the positive comments on the report. I have to thank Julie, who wrote the bulk of the report, so I can't let that go unnoticed. But with respect to the public, a couple things there. We did have our last public engagement. We did report on at a very high level, albeit what we heard, and gave some indication of where we were going. That was an opportunity also for people to continue to comment and provide their feedback on things that we had missed. I think what came about of that as well, there was a subsequent stakeholder meeting that came about afterwards in late October that ensued. So I think we've certainly I believe we've reached out and heard from a lot of individuals and stakeholder groups. I believe we've captured the comments fully. The report is also, my understanding, has been online since it was available as well. So that has been an opportunity for the public to see that, and they could have come this evening and spoken. I think, in my view, there has been enough engagement. If there is concerns with it, I'm sure we'd have seen this gallery a lot fuller and people speaking up against or to the report. So, but I'm in your hands in terms of how you want to deal with that. But in my opinion, we've certainly provided ample opportunity for public engagement.
Councillor?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Pierre.
Okay, thank you. Who hasn't spoken yet that may wish to speak? Okay, I'll go back to Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the presenter. I think this was a really good discussion tonight. And I think it had to be said that there is an opportunity that particularly the community centers will be broken out, because all people are seeing right now is that plan online without the explanation that it's going to be looked at. That scares the heck out of some people when they just see that and do the math with those metrics and that. So kudos to staff for explaining how that is going to happen. And also staff have been working on those community centers. So this isn't I know there's been some waiting until this came out to see what, some of the recommendations are. But I was certainly prepared tonight to ask that this be put off till we get comment from some of those. But from what I've heard and the explanation that there'll be another kick at the can when different things come up, I'm confident that that'll get a good airing at that time. So thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bruno?
Yes, I still tend to agree with Councillor Wells on getting this out more thoroughly, and I'm just wondering if it's possible, through you to Ashley or Nicole, the people that participated, did we get their electronic, their email? Well, they have gotten it. Can they get it?
Staff?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruno. The draft master plan was circulated to all of the stakeholders and those that provided comment. It was done by email on November 29th, the same day that it was circulated to council.
Great. Just as an assist, the other thing I'm wondering about, you want to get this rolling. I think we all would like to get rolling. I'm sure there's some low-hanging fruit stuff that we could do, some stuff that's a lot of bang for not necessarily resources, breaking down some silos. I like the whole thing about information desk at the Y. Those kind of things can be done with not necessarily a lot of money, but just an emphasis on them and fruitful. I was wondering if there's a way that, I brought this up after FCM, is when I read the recommendation, it talks about the Director of Community Economic Development be directed to commence implementation of the recommendations found within this report, including the submission of items for council approval through the annual capital and operating budget process. So, I don't know if you have a couple projects online that you want to present, but I'm concerned that the budget process is backed up, and if we don't get to you approvals till February, March, April, does that hinder you? And B, some of these projects have to be, if you're building a house, you have to have the foundation first and then the first floor. They may cross over a year. And so do you need some kind of, I brought this up with the previous treasurer, do we need to be looking at some way of forecasting funding that goes perhaps beyond a year? I.e. being at the capital budget, not the operating budget. If you think you can do it within the confines of the annual, that's fine. I just don't want you to not be able to complete a project and you can't do project 2 until you do 1, and 1 isn't fully funded, and so the whole thing just keeps getting backed up.
Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the next steps for staff at this point in time, if council chooses to adopt in principle or endorse the report tonight, is going to be us meeting together and breaking down the master plan into, there is timelines provided and things to set those priorities with regard to trying to forecast what the future is going to bring. But we will also be tying every aspect of the master plan back to our work plan as individual staff members. So our performance evaluations will be tied to those things, as well as the future budget submissions. So I think what we would probably need at this point in time is a little bit of probably at least to the beginning of the new year to digest the entire report, meaning break it down into implementation, who's the lead staff members, what have you. And then, as you know, staff is going to be bringing forward some recommendations to this budget process. We have taken the draft document, worked with the consultants to identify some priorities that we would like to see to bring forward to council for this next budget. Certainly, though, if there are items that that come up in advance of that, we'll present those to council so that those can be prioritized rather than put on hold.
Great.
I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Councillor Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to echo a little bit of what Ashley mentioned is, Ashley and Nicole have brought forward some of the items anticipating that provided to myself that'll be brought forward to budget to sort of kickstart some of the projects in there. So council will see that coming forward in the budget process. With regard to, I think, Councillor Bodner's point about that the public may look at this document when it's online right now saying, well, this is it. I think, and I'll talk to Ashley and our IT people about what we could put, maybe a little bit of a notification or a disclaimer or something on the website with the report, because once this is passed by council, if it's passed by council tonight, then it's not a draft copy that's on the website, it'll be the final copy that's on the website, and we can put a little notation on there that, you know, these are for consideration for future recommendations that would be coming to council for approvals and something along those lines, so that the public would then see it, that this isn't written in stone, that this is something that's a guideline or a tool for future council.
Okay, Councillor. Councillor Brown. Councillor Kalala.
Thank you for the presentation, and I know the work that both Ashley and Nicole have been putting into all of this as well, and I want to thank you for it. I've seen master plans before, and it's a great master plan, and I guess I'm like, I heard someone else mention along the way, it's not written in stone, as Peter says, and I know there'll be detours along the way. Things change in a matter of 1 year, let alone 10 years, and it'll all be for the better. But if we don't start, we will never start. And I just feel that we really need to adopt this and go forward from this point. And as I said, you know, things can be tweaked as you go, but I think that the community needs to know that we are willing to do this. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Any further questions? Staff, any more comments? No? Pierre, you're all set?
Thank you very much.
Good, thank you, and thank you to your team for a great process that moved along quite smoothly, I think, and both with council, the Canales Committee, our stakeholders, and then our subsequent last meeting that we put together after information came forward with the groups that use our facilities. So I do thank everyone that was involved, and we really want to thank the public for getting involved, both on the survey side and coming to our meetings and things like that. So thank you very much. So I think Councillor Kalala said it quite well, is the fact that, councillors, this is a roadmap, and like any journey that you take, you don't always follow the roadmap to 100% of the way, that you do have detours that may take you in a different direction based on where you're going. So in anything that I've ever been involved with here at the city or any other organization, is the fact that, you know, it is a well laid out plan, and then those plans will be developed as staff brings them back to us with consultation with our community groups, our partnerships that we have within the city, and as well as our citizens within the city. So, you know, it's not like as everybody said, and I think everybody understands around this table, that, well, this is the way it is, and you're going to stop this program, or you're going to close this facility. That's not the way it's done. It's never been done that way around here. Staff always brings us back. The only thing I may ask, though, is, and it's something that Councillor Bruno said, instead of coming back on an annual basis, maybe a quarterly basis to us, just to give us an idea of where you are. The report on a quarterly basis may say that, you know, we're still with the last quarter where we haven't implemented anything new, but it gives us a faster update as we're moving forward, so that we could do that. If that's fine. Staff, is that okay? Can the mover and seconder take that as a friendly amendment? Can I have somebody, I suppose, do I need somebody to put that forward, or can we take it as a friendly amendment?
I can just accept it as staff direction.
Take it as staff direction? Okay. Okay, so quarterly? All right. Okay, any more questions? All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, item 3, Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mayor. Motion by Councillor Bagu, re-grant monies for residential lead-lined water service replacement.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder for that? Councillor Bagu. Councillor Wells.
Just a question that maybe Mark, through you to Mark, where he might be able to explain. It calls for a 1-year trial grant program. I'm not sure whether trial is what I understand it to be, because to me it says, oh, we're going to try this, and if it works, we're going to continue it. If it doesn't work, we're not going to continue it. I think we may miss people with that. I tend to go with a 1-year program of doing that, so everybody knows that there's an end date to it, and they'll jump on it or they won't do it. Just so there's some boundaries around that. So maybe Mark, I don't know if you can help me on that.
That, Councillor Wells, is probably 100% my fault. Our city clerk wrote it out so excellent to me in an email, and I added that word. I probably should not have added that word. She did a far better job than I did. So I have no problem with removing the word trial.
Very transparent.
Okay. I need that as you want that as an amendment? You want it as an amendment? Friendly amendment? Okay, so friendly amendment is we'll take the word trial out of there. Councillor Desmarais?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I just had a few questions about this. It's the implementation of a 1-year grant program for homeowners to receive assistance when replacing their lead and leaking service lines, or lead leaking service lines. I'd like to know how much of a grant will they receive? Will it be open to all people with all means? If you have, if you have wonderful financial means, are we going to be, letting the taxpayers foot the bill for you to get your lead line services replaced? I mean, how is that going to work? And I'd like to know, or is this an opportunity for us to provide the funding for somebody to do this, and then they pay it back slowly over their bill, which would make sense that way. But there's just not enough details for me to understand what's really being asked for here.
Well, Councillor, so staff's going to bring this back, so they're going to actually put the plan together. So they'll come back to us and say, for the first year, we'll pay up to $1,000 per household as part of the grant program, and we put a pot of $10,000 in it, so it gets you 10 households. Whatever number that may be, that's an example. So in similar municipalities, that's how they've done it, where they've put a cap on how much you can get, and they've put a limit onto the total value of the project. So that's something that staff will bring back to us, but that'll be something that we'll debate here and we can change. And I think staff will have to be very cognizant of how we may or may not allow some people to access this on what we're allowed under the Municipal Act. So I think staff will work with that. So all we're doing is asking staff to come back with a report to actually implement this. So they'll be bringing that forward. So I would suggest that if anybody has any suggestions, to get it to staff.
Okay,
Counselor?
I just haven't seen it done this way before, so it struck me as odd that we were going to actually vote on whether staff would be putting something together. Normally, a council would bring that whole package together to us. It was just different. But okay, thank you.
No, Counselor, it's a direction of staff to come back with a report. We do that all the time.
Yeah, it's just not in a motion like this, so it's just a little different. I thought maybe I was missing something,
Yeah.
that's why I was asking.
That's your clerk. She's doing a fine job over here. Counselor Bruno.
Just one thing, I saw this earlier today, I wasn't going to pull it, but because it was pulled, I could have staff on the side. I thought in Darlene's presentation, the whole thing about lead, it just wasn't the line. Weren't there all these connections internal? So it could be the soldering. In other words, it could be more than the line.
Yes.
And so I don't know if you meant for that to be included.
I'll put it through staff. Stephen?
Through you, your worship, to Councillor Bruno. This would be directed straight towards the lead service itself from property line into the home, so it wouldn't account for the lead solder that would have been used in copper fittings or anything throughout the house.
Okay.
Yeah, this is from the street to the foundation.
Okay.
And it only deals with lead lines. Okay, Councillor Borgard.
Through your worship to Mr. Shapowski, a report like this, I would assume, would take a lot of research and would be pretty intensive. Is it possible that you'll be able to get a report to us that is comprehensive enough for us to debate this and implement it if need be budget starts in January, if I'm correct? So that's quite a quick turnaround, is it not?
Through your worship to Councillor Beauregard. Yes, it'll be tight, but already there's a few options that we can do. There's a certain option where we could put a set amount of funds away, $10,000, $20,000, and put a $1,000 or $2,000 grant towards each service, and then once that runs out, it's done. There's also financing programs, and there's also timelines that we can put against this too. So we put $20,000 in a pot, $2,000 per home, and then once it's gone, it's gone. So there's three main options that we can kind of go at right now, and I think if we lay those out for council, you'd be able to make an educated decision to see which way we want to go.
Councillor.
Through your worship, you were saying that it'll be, once those funds are gone, they're gone. So then that kind of like the whole 1 year time frame can be a little bit misleading. If we say that because those funds are gone before that 1 year, then there's nothing there. So I just want to make sure that that you take that into consideration when the report, so that council can debate that, or maybe we change the program name from 1 year to until the funds are gone, whatever is more appropriate.
Okay. And I think that's what staff will bring forward, Councillor. The fact that it could be a longer than a 1 year program. But that'll be for us to debate once we get the meat and potatoes up. All right. Anything else, councillors? Councillor Bruno, you're all set? Council, you're all set? Everybody? Okay. Great. So motion, and the only thing we're taking out is the word trial on this for staff. All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item number 4, Councillor Clayliff.
Fire and Emergency Services Department, Report 219-189, subject municipal establishing and regulating bylaw.
Okay, seconder for that, Councillor Beauregard. Councillor Clayliff.
I just had a quick question I wanted to ask the chief about. On item 8.2, it's on page 113, you've got down higher, increased ability to enroll to provide advanced life support. I just wondered what are you looking to do more actual life support? Like I'm looking at, because sometimes you're the first on the scene. So I just wondered what was involved when you said that.
Chief.
Through your worship to council. That really hasn't changed over the years. Our role within the EMS process is in the process of changing significantly with regards to how EMS now is rolling out their programs. It has affected our responses. To be quite honest with you, I had a discussion with the CAO of the day, which was Scott, who unfortunately isn't here at the present time. But we're anticipating about a 56% reduction in EMS calls once this program is fully initiated over the next 12 months. And certainly the first 3 months have shown that we are going to see a significant increase in medical calls. So we don't anticipate changing what we're going to do in any way, shape, or form. We over the years, through the master planning process, discussed increasing our medical training. We never moved forward with that, quite simply because we didn't think the demand was there for it, because EMS has upped their ante with regards to 2 or 3 units in the city at high times. So our role within the EMS system probably isn't going to change. In fact, I think you're going to see a decrease in it as they're projecting.
Thank you. I just wondered how it all played out.
Okay. Any further questions? Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Chief Cartwright. On page 98 of our package, you address the attendance, and it's stated in that, on that bylaw, that it'll be reviewed once yearly. I have a little concerns about training. Is very expensive for us, and if we go through half a year in training an individual, or even longer, and we find that by the end of the year, you find that he doesn't meet the criteria for attendance then at that point in time, we decide that we're going to terminate that employee. We've lost all that time, we've lost all that cost for training. Should the attendance not be monitored continuously, just like the program is offered continuously, so that if someone fails to meet that within their first, say, 6 months, then we can say, okay, this isn't what you should be doing for your living, or as a volunteer?
Chief?
Your Worship, through yourself to council, quite honestly, we monitor it on an ongoing basis. In our discussions with the association executive, this particular percentage was adjusted at this particular time. Quite simply, the training program has seen a significant increase over the last 12 months. The deputy chief has taken upon himself, that was his priority I'd given him, to rebuild the entire training program based on the new NFPA training protocols that have been set aside by the province, or recognized within the province of Ontario, and we've done so. Every department in Niagara has, every chief in Niagara has done so, and so we certainly have played a key role in that. To answer your questions with review, we constantly review, we constantly look at training. We over the years, this really hasn't changed, with one exception, that being the normally we would do it at 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months. We would bring them in and have a discussion with them at the 12 and the 18 months. So that is a policy that's been in place here for a number of years, and it's been enforced rather rigidly, especially if we don't get communication and people don't sit down with us and talk to us about the issues with regards to their inability to come out, or if their job changes, those types of things. We don't read minds very well in the fire department. We need to be spoken to, so communication is a two-way street. So the reality is, the way this bylaw is written is very similar to the last ones over the last 18 years, 19 years. The difference in this one is that it's based on a 60%, which is up from 50%, and it's reduced for fires from 35 to 30%, which the association has agreed to. It was given to the executive, and that in turn was then circulated to the association members by the executive. We got zero negative feedback from it. In fact, they've already shown their members and given them a calendar for training for the entire year of 2020. So to answer your question, if we notice somebody not coming out, that's why it says very clearly in here, all firefighters have to participate in this. We always had a problem with our full-time guys who came back as volunteers. Some of them fought the fact, yes, they want to come to training, but only when they choose to do so. By changing this bylaw, it means they have to come to training and participate in training.
Councillor?
I appreciate that, but my concern was that of the time span of review and action on that review. That was just by the bylaw, and I'm just not, I just didn't know whether someone could say, well, I've got 6 more months within this term that I can float through.
Your Worship, maybe I can speak to that, just try to clarify it a bit. So you'd get a 12-month period of time, and then we'd monitor it. We would look at their attendance. If they didn't make it, they'd be notified in writing that they didn't make it at the 12 months. We'd look at it in 6 months again. If they failed to do it, they would get another letter and a possibility of an interview if we didn't hear anything back from them. And then at the 24 months, if they still didn't make it, they would or could be terminated.
Council?
That's my understanding of that, Chief. My position on that is that 6 months is way too long. If someone's not hitting the criteria before 6 months, then I would tend to say that they're not in the position to continue with it. But that's just my opinion.
Chief?
Your Worship, I don't know how to answer your question. I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I think we've got to try to be as fair as we can and give everybody an opportunity to correct their deficiencies, if at all possible. And we certainly do offer those opportunities. We also offer make-up opportunities. I'm a strong believer in training in particular. That's why you've seen an increase in the training percentage requirement. We've never had an issue. We've never once in 18 years that I've been here has a firefighter been let go for lack of training or poor training. It's the attendance coming to calls. So we've raised the training requirements, lowered the emergency response requirements. We're trying to be as fair as possible to them.
Councillor?
Okay.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor?
Yeah. Through you, Your Worship, to the Chief. This is more of just a more grammatical or technical sort of question. On section 15, no person or person shall, and (a) wantonly or maliciously injure or damage any fire engine, hose, ladders, or other apparatus and equipment belonging to the department, and it ends with a semicolon. Was there supposed to be another provision there, like A, B, C? Like, it just appears to me that it's alluding to another letter or sequence in there. Maybe it should just be no person or person shall, and then what A is, and just end with a period. That's all.
Chief?
Your Worship, I'd have to look at that in more detail compared to what we have, but I can work that out with the clerk's office and make sure that we're on the right page for that.
Yeah, just for clarity that it's just no. Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. Clerk's got that. Yeah, she sees what you're talking about. Good. Thank you, Councillor. Okay. See no more questions. All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried.
Your Worship, if I could, if you don't mind, a couple things I'd like to mention if I could.
Sure.
Because I think it's a value to the community, in particular those that assisted us this year. I'd like to let everybody know that our toy drive this year was a huge success. My deputy and myself and others took 4 truckloads of toys that had been stored at the fire hall. We've collected over the course of the last number of weeks, including in the Santa Claus Parade Route. We appreciate the support of the community as a whole. There's also some money donated towards it. So those toys have been turned over to Port Cares, and they'll be distributed in the community to the people that need assistance. So we appreciate the help. And if I could just send a quick fire safety message, if you don't mind, with regards to this time of year. It's always a hazardous time of year. We all remember what happened about 3 years ago. This coming Saturday, we don't want to see that happen again in our community or anywhere else for that matter. But certainly always remember fire safety and always be safe at Christmas time. And on behalf of myself, my staff, and my firefighters, both full-time and volunteers, we appreciate everybody working hard to keep a fire-safe Christmas season and enjoy yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. On to item 13, Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. Memorandum from Nancy Giles, Executive Assistant, report from Grant Policy Committee, policy and application changes.
We got a seconder to that? Councillor Beauregard. Councillor Bruno.
Yes, Your Worship. I bring this forward just to highlight a couple of things that the committee went through in updating its policies and procedures. In particular, I just want council and members of the public to know, and those that apply, we last looked at it in 2015. We look at it fairly often, and there's quite a bit of scrutiny for $30,000. The highlights, I would have to say, were just that we've now let the applicants know more of the limitations that were out there, whereas before they tried to prescribe to the policies as they read. Again, this was just an exercise in trying to make it clearer, and like most policies over the years, you have couple things you've never seen before in terms of applicants, and so we tightened that up on that. One was a flow-through, and the other one was city fees, taxes, et cetera. Thank you, Richard.
Okay, Councillor Demeray?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I was glad to see that this came forward because it certainly, the clarity was needed, and the guidelines had to make some sense, which they didn't in the past. My only concern with this, the way this comes forward, is that we will only consider those organizations that are incorporated as nonprofits, which puts a burden on the organization to go through that legal process. There's a certain cost to that. And basically what we've set up is that we are now going to allow funding to only those organizations who are already well set up to do their own funding, to do their own fundraising. It kind of defeats the purpose. One of the best things about this fund in the past is that we would be able to give some money to those small groups, not incorporated nonprofits, but those small groups that were doing good things in the community, to allow them to get a foot in the door, get started, start growing, and become maybe one of those nonprofits someday. But we've totally eliminated them now. They no longer matter. All that matters is that we're going to go with all those registered people. I just think that we're defeating the purpose of what that funding really was there for in the past. We helped out people who are doing good things in the community. Now we're helping out organizations that are already well structured with funding systems in place and just making their efforts to fundraise a little easier. So this part I don't like, the rest of it I do like. I just want to have my say on that, that's all.
Councillor Borgard?
Through your worship, to council and anyone in the public that may be watching this, to follow from Councillor Bruno, a lot of the changes that were made also were in line with what the province does for the Trillium grants. So that's one of those things that I just want to let people know, especially in terms of entities that are not eligible for funding and those that are, and the type of programs that we wish to fund. So I just want to add that.
Can always make an amendment, Councillor.
You are right, sir, and I will. I would like to, yes, I would like to move that amendment, is that we entertain all applications and that the committee use their discretion when they're reviewing those applications. The committee is well versed in what needs to happen in the city and what we should be spending money on, and I think that I would have faith in their decisions.
Can you, only because I've been involved in this and I was involved with Trillium, can you narrow it down to that really it's rewording A, including nonprofit organizations? Because if you say all, I don't want to, the groups that are excluded shouldn't even be putting in an application, quite frankly.
That's right.
So for us not to be looking at those.
It was under eligibility 3.0, item A that I was looking at. Item 1, subsection item A. The organization shall be incorporated as a nonprofit corporation with charitable objectives to be registered as a charitable corporation under the Canada Income Tax Act.
Yeah, so there's really two there, but if you want to put in there, the organization shall be incorporated as a nonprofit corporation or a nonprofit entity within the city of Port Colborne.
Perfect. I just wasn't sure what language to use for that, but that would be fine. It just allows that
Yeah, and in fact, to be quite honest, Councillor, before these were here, we actually did that with one of our groups, that they were going through incorporation. They showed us their application and we gave them a grant. Now they are incorporated, so you're 100% correct. But you're right, it gives us a little bit more leeway to do those things. I mean, again, these really aren't always there etched in stone. It just allows it, yeah. But it'll actually allows our staff to actually hand back application to those that definitely should not be asking for money from the city of Port Colborne. That those, and I think they're laid out in 3.1 here, that those things we're just not going to fund.
That's right.
And that's the way it should be. So, Madam Clerk, did you get that then for the change?
That in section 3.0, it will be added that or a nonprofit entity within the city of Port Colborne.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bruno, you want to second that amendment?
Absolutely.
Okay. Any questions to the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment? That's carried. Any questions to the motion as amended? All those in favor? Great, thank you. Thank you, Counselor. Okay, so that's done. All right, any notices of motion this evening? Seeing none, I'll adjourn this portion of the meeting, and before we get on to the next, take a 5-minute break. Just 5 minutes before we get on to the council portion. Call council portion to order. Introduction of addendum items. Anything, Madam Clerk?
There are no addendum items this evening.
Confirmation of the agenda. Mover and seconder. Councillor Danch, Councillor Clayliff. Questions? All in favor? That's carried. Disclosures of interest. Adoption of minutes. I'll do these in block. Special meeting of Council 3319 held on November 25th, 2019. Regular meeting of Council 3419 held on November 25th, 2019. Mover and seconder. Councillor Wells, Councillor Demeray. Questions to those minutes? All in favor? That's carried. Any items requiring separate discussion? Mover and a seconder to approve all the items. Councillor Danch, Councillor Beauregard. Any questions? All those in favor? That's carried. No proclamations. Minutes of boards, commissions, and committees. I'll do these in block. Minutes of the Canal Days Advisory Committee meeting of September 11th and October 22nd of 2019. Minutes of the Senior Advisory Committee meeting of August 15th and September 19th, 2019. Minutes of the Port Colborne Active Transportation Advisory Committee meeting of July 15th and September 16th of 2019. Minutes of the Port Colborne Public Library Board meeting of October the 8th, 2019, and minutes of the Grant Policy Committee meeting of July 31st, 2019. Mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Bruno, Councillor Demeray. Any questions on any of those minutes? All in favor? That's carried. Madam Clerk, consideration of bylaws.
There are 8 bylaws this evening. Bylaw 6694-58-19 to bylaw 6749-113-19. And I just want to note that bylaw 6744-108-19 is only the first and second reading this evening.
Okay. Mover and a seconder for the bylaws. Councillor Kalaliff, Councillor Bodner. Any questions on any of the bylaws? All those in favor? That's carried. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder of the council do now proceed into closed session in order to address the following matters. Minutes of the closed session portion of the following council meeting, November the 25th of 2019. Planning and Development Report 2019-159 regarding property investigations pursuant to the Municipal Act 2001, subsections 2392B. Personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and subsection 2393.1, a meeting of a council or local board or of a committee of either of them may be closed to the public if the following conditions are both satisfied. 1, the meeting is held for the purpose of educating or training members, and 2, at the meeting no member discusses or otherwise deals with any matter in a way that materially advances the business or decision making of the council, local board, or committee. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Councillor Bodner, Councillor Kalaliff. Any questions? All those in favor? That's carried, and we'll go into room 3.